Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the CFR training webinar for the calendar year 2022 Consolidated Fiscal Report. We have decent-sized crowd today with over 900 attendees, so hopefully we don't have any issues with the WebEx. Both webinar sessions will be recorded and posted on YouTube. So if you have a colleague that could not make it or you want to listen to training again, you will be able to. We will send an email out to all providers notifying them of when they are available and where they can be found. My name is Alpa Amin, a representative from OPWDD, and I will be the host for the two webinars we have scheduled this week. Today's NY State representative will be as follows. Representing OSS, Paul Green and Paul Sutton. Representing OMH, Richard Brooks, Michelle Zelensky, Sean Griffin. Representing OPWDD, Francis Cicillo, Kenneth Glenbar, myself, and Emily Sowards. Representing SED, Kate Cochran. Representing DOH, Jeffrey Nicholson. Also, we have a survey that will pop up at the end of the event. We would greatly appreciate you taking the time to fill out the survey so that we can continue to make this training better each time. Session 1 will cover getting started, introduction to CFRS Web, core reporting, CFR 1 through GMH 1. This slide is important, and hopefully you have had the opportunity to check out previous Q&As that have been posted on the OMS website listed on the screen. We strongly encourage all attendees to ask questions through the Q&A function in the webinar. It is on your right-hand side of your screen, and you might have to click the arrow next to the Q&A to open up the dialog box. If you don't see it, click the three dots at the bottom right of the WebEx and then click Q&A. We will not be answering questions today, but plan on answering all the questions and posting answers online along with the recording of this webinar so that everyone can get the benefit of this webinar and the questions asked. This is always good to know when you have a question. This slide shows how to contact each agency. Most of us are working a hybrid in-office remote schedule, so all the agencies prefer email contact. New York State Office of Children and Family Service Providers may submit questions regarding their CFR submissions to OMS CFR unit. Any claim question can go to the following. As noted on the previous slide, email would be the preferred method. By end of this seminar, we hope to accomplish the following goals. Introduce providers to the CFR manual and CFRS Web. Provide NYS agency contact information for specific questions not covered during this training session. Help providers become familiar with the CFR Core Reports. Discuss important policies, principles, and rules regarding completion of the CFR. I will now pass on the presenting to our first panelist.
Thank you, Alpa. This is Paul Sutton representing OASIS, and I'll talk to you guys about getting started. The CFR manual contains 9 general overview sections with a section for each of the core, claiming, and supplemental schedules. There are numerous appendices also containing detailed information as well. You should be reviewing the first 9 sections as well as the appendices before you begin working on the CFR. The manuals are available online at the following link below. Here is a screenshot of the website where they're available. As you can see, the manual appendices are available to download, as well as a link to access an extension request if you need to file for an extension to file. And you can also access the transmittal letters here which details the latest changes and revisions to the manual. The CFR is used as a year-end cost report that documents service provider expenses and revenues on one consolidated report and is shared by the New York State agencies. Cost report information is used for rate and fee settings, cost of living increases, as well as fiscal analysis and policy development. The cost reports are also known as the CFR Core Schedules and consist of the CFR 1 through 6 and the DMH-1. A year-end state claiming document is the basis of payment for your final claim on of the CFR period. The claiming schedules are the DMH-2 and 3. Full accrual accounting must be used when reporting fiscal information on the schedule CFR 1 through 6, the DMH-1, and the COVID informational schedules. The schedules DMH-2 and 3 may be completed on an accrual, modified accrual, or cash basis. Filers of many abbreviated CFRs may complete all the required schedules on accrual, modified accrual, or cash basis of accounting. The goal of accrual accounting is to account in the period in which they occur the effects of transactions and other events and circumstances to the extent that those financial effects are recognizable and measurable. This means that revenue is recognized and recorded when earned, regardless of when you receive payment, and expenses are recognized and recorded as they are incurred, not when they are paid. Units of service are counted when provided, and your salaries are reported in the period incurred, not when the paycheck is issued. There are 4 types of CFR submissions: full, abbreviated, Article 28 abbreviated, and mini abbreviated. The type of CFR the provider must complete depends on the type of programs operated and the amount and type of funding received. You should review the submission matrices in Section 2 of the CFR manual to determine the type of CFR submission required. When a service provider is funded by more than one state agency, the most stringent reporting requirements apply for all filings. This means that if you have programs with OASIS and OMH, and OASIS only requires an abbreviated CFR, but OMH requires a full CFR, you have to file a full CFR for all programs. This is a screenshot of the submission matrices that we referred to in the previous slide. It's found in Section 2 of the manual, and this can be used to determine which type of CFR you need to file. Note that for purposes of determining submission requirements, Medicaid managed care is considered to be Medicaid. Please note that these matrices change often, so should be reviewed yearly. CFR reporting periods are generally based on the geographic location of the service provider's corporate headquarters. This training covers the January 1st to December 31st, 2022 calendar year reporting period. All programs operated during this time should be reported on the CFR. Now, if your agency has a contract for one or more programs funded on a period different than your agency's standard CFR reporting period, an additional mini abbreviated CFR may be required. The most common type of off-cycle contracts are for special legislative grants or member items. Example of a secondary submission would be if you have for a provider that has corporate headquarters in Manhattan and operates programs both Manhattan and Westchester County. You must submit your primary CFR on the standard reporting period of July 1st through June 30th. This service provider would then complete the CFR detailing expenses and revenues for all programs in operation during that time period, including the Westchester programs. Further, they must also submit a secondary mini abbreviated CFR on the January 1st through December 31st reporting period for the programs funded by Westchester County only. for your CFRs for your calendar years will be due for OMH and SED providers will be due for on May 1st, and all other New York State agencies will be due on June 1st. Now, OMH and SED may have providers may request a 30-day extension, and the link for to access the form for extension is found below. Now, if you do not meet these, if you do not file on time, you may be subject to various penalties and sanctions, but we will not go into too much detail with that right now, but they will be discussed further in the presentation by each individual state agency. As you can see, here's penalties for OASIS, OMH, OPWDD, and SED. If your agency is funded through an LGU contract, check with the county or New York City for their specific requirements regarding the CFR and final claim submissions. Your LGUs may require a submission due date earlier than the New York State agency prescribed due date. New York State agency requirements are the minimum requirements regarding CFR submission. Your LGU requirements can be stricter than this, but cannot be more lenient. And sending copies of your certification schedules to the county or local LGU does not fulfill your requirement with the state agencies. CFRs are prepared and submitted using the new CFRS Web. The link to access this is found below. In addition to the submission of the CFR, certification pages, financial statements, and parent agency allocation should be submitted through CFRS Web as well. Additional instructions on uploading certification pages through CFRS Web will be discussed later in the presentation. Please do not mail paper copies of your CFR Core schedules to the New York State Agency CFR review units. It's important to note that the CFRS Web is the preferred method of submitting certifications. In addition, OASIS, OMH, OPWDD, and SED will continue to accept emailed PDF copies of all required certifications. OMH, OPWDD, and SED will also accept paper copies of the certifications as well. Emailed PDF copies should be sent to the CFR units that were and the emails to send these to were provided earlier in the presentation. When a revised CFR is submitted, a provider is required to upload revised certifications complete with a new DCN number. For OASIS, a new CFR I, IIIA, III, and IV are required. Note that subsequent to a CFR II being received, OASIS will accept an attestation reporting minor changes in lieu of an additional CFR II. For SED, a new CFR I and II is required. For all other agencies, just the CFR I is required. Important to note that if you're emailing your certification schedules in, they should follow a specific naming structure. For OASIS, you should name your files as listed below, and the same as OPWDD. And please note that OMH and SED do not require a specific file name for the certifications to be emailed. It is preferred that consolidated financial statements, including all affiliates, be submitted electronically as PDF files through the CFRS Web. In addition, financial statements reflecting information of the provider should be uploaded if available as well. Financial statements should only be uploaded one time for a fiscal reporting period unless there are changes. Do not upload draft financial statements. And financial statements are not required if you only file them in abbreviated CFR. Prior period financial statements can also be uploaded through the CFRS Web. It is preferred that CPA audited financial statements correspond to the CFR reporting period. However, if your agency's corporate fiscal year is different than the CFR reporting period, submit the financial statements with an end date that falls within the CFR reporting period. Tips on financial record keeping. Program payroll and fringe benefits should be reconciled to the general ledger on a monthly or quarterly basis. Salary allocations between different programs should be carefully monitored. Expenses and revenues should be monitored on a regular basis and compared against your budget. Units of service provided by programs should be tracked on a regular basis, and non-allowable costs should be tracked for easy identification when preparing the CFR. Program descriptions and units of service definitions can be found in Appendices E, F, G, H, HH, and II. A list of some, but not all, non-allowable costs can be found in Appendix X of the CFR manual. A cost must be reasonable and/or necessary for providing services in both its nature and amount. In determining the reasonableness of a given cost, consideration will be given to whether the costs incurred in rendering the services are generally recognized as ordinary and necessary for the operation of the organization and the restraints or requirements imposed by federal and state laws. Providers operating DMH programs should refer to Appendix X of the manual for a list of some but not all costs, non-allowable costs. All non-allowable costs included as an expense on any line of the CFR Schedule CFR 1, 2, 3, DMH 1, and DMH 2 must be reported in the adjustments or non-allowable cost line of the applicable schedules. Following are some examples of non-allowable costs that must be adjusted out of the reporting costs. Costs that are not properly related to patient care and principally afforded diversion, amusement, or entertainment to owners, operators, or employees. Costs related to the purchase of alcoholic beverages. Costs of training afforded to staff that does not directly relate to the fulfillment of their required duties. Please be aware that expenses which are acceptable per GAAP or the IRS may or may not be reimbursable. Related party transactions. These are allowable costs of a related party transaction is the lower of the organization's actual cost or the fair market value of providing the goods or services supplied. All related party transactions, as well as entity-wide agency administration, must be disclosed in detail on the CFR 5. All excess related party transaction costs included as an expense must be reported on the adjustments or non-allowable cost line of the applicable schedule. Fringe benefit expenses that are not reasonable and available to all employees are non-allowable and must be adjusted out of reporting costs on the applicable CFR schedule. Some examples of non-allowable benefits include supplemental executive retirement plans or any non-qualified deferred compensation plan subject to IRC subsection 457. I will now pass this off to our next presenter who will be introducing the new CFRS Web.
Hello, my name is Francis Vasalio. I work with New York State OPWDD. We're going to start with the new CFRS Web. As before with the desktop, it's this one platform that is used by 6 different New York State agencies. You're supposed to file one CFR with all the information on the programs that are funded by the different state agencies. Just recently, I came across a provider had filed one CFR with our agency and another one with OMH. Then they finally figured out they had to combine all that together into one CFR. When you're completing a CFR, the CFR, you need information about your organization and all the different programs and program sites that you're operating. One nice thing about the program, the CFRS Web, is that regardless of which reporting period you're working on a CFR for, it knows which programs were active for that period and which funding source codes were available. Now, as of August, the desktop CFR program is no longer operational. So whether you're creating a new CFR for calendar 22 or going back to revise a previously submitted CFR, you're going to have to use CFRS Web. When you get into CFRS Web, you'll see that all the submissions that you've uploaded to the state going back to 2012 are going to be available for you to view and edit. And you'll be uploading your certification pages and your financial statement using CFRS Web. If you're having difficulties using the program, you can contact the CFR units for each of the state agencies. If you think it's not functioning correctly, the CFRS Web, there's contact information there for the help desk, either a phone call or email. I will caution you that if you're one of those people that waits till the last day to try to finish things off, you may have difficulty getting contact back from someone. We strongly recommend that every organization have a couple of staff people signed up for the CFR announcement list. This is available at the Office of Mental Health CFR web page. The purpose of this is so that you can be notified quickly if there's any announcements to be made. For instance, someone contacted me yesterday. They were ready to start doing their calendar 22. Well, the program hasn't been put in place yet for that. So if you've entered your email address, then when the programming's in place for you to start your calendar 22, you'll get an email letting you know that. For those of you who have gone through all the steps involved in getting access to the New York State mainframe computer here, you understand there's a lot of security involved. We've also established security at the provider level. There's going to be at least one security manager designated by each of the provider agencies. That security manager is the person who can go in and designate which staff will have access to your CFR and to give them assigned roles to those users. Again, having more than one security manager is probably a good idea in case one of you hits that Mega Millions jackpot this week and isn't here the next time the CFR has to be completed. I mentioned user roles. Each user will have different access and different abilities to use the CFR based on the role designated by the security manager. The lowest level role is a reviewer. That person can get into your CFR, either the ones that have been submitted or ones that are in progress, and review them, but they cannot make any changes. They can't create a CFR. A preparer can do everything a reviewer can do, but they could also create a CFR or create a CFR that's already in process. And the highest role is a submitter role. That person can do everything a preparer and reviewer can do, but they can also upload documents to us. They can hit the button to submit a CFR that has a DCN to us. It's probably a very good idea to have a couple of people with submitter roles in case you're close to a deadline and you need to get something uploaded to us. Having more than one person with the authority to do that could be a good thing. No one person needs to have multiple roles. You can have as many preparers or submitters as you want, but you don't have to give one staff member more than one of these roles. If you give them submitter role, they can do everything that a preparer and a reviewer can do. Once you get into the CFR, the top of the page is the announcement board. Here we're showing the due dates for the CFRs. You might also see at some point, we may have an announcement that the programming is in place to begin your calendar 22 CFRs. Underneath that, you see 4 different sections of what you can do. If you're creating a new submission, that's upper left. If you're revising or uploading documents, lower left. If you've come back to work that's in progress and you need to get back into it, that's upper right. And then there are links on lower right. Now you'll notice here, the create new submission is in gray while the others are in gold. If you are a user that has not been given at least preparer authority, a preparer role, then it'll be grayed out because you can't create a CFR. And so a person who was a reviewer would only have the one block there in gold that they could proceed. Now, if you do have the authority, you'll see it would be in gold, and you would hit the button to create a new submission, and then it would pop up, and you have to describe what you're doing here. The first thing on that line, the submission type, you'd have to assign whether this new CFR is going to be full or abbreviated or a mini. Then you have to check off the different state agencies that have funding that's going to be represented in the CFR. Then you have to choose the reporting cycle, either calendar or fiscal year, and the reporting period, so what year, basically. Now, the next question, do you want to carry forward data from a prior submission? In this example, they've chosen no. And the next screen that comes up is where they would start filling in the information about their agency, about the organization they work for. A lot of information that's there. Fortunately, almost all of you are instead going to choose yes for that question there. And you're going to carry forward data from a prior submission instead of starting from scratch. Once you've chosen that, you're going to see the last submission that you uploaded for each, or submitted for each of the reporting periods. You can only bring forward data from the last submission for each reporting period. So you normally, if you're creating a calendar 22, you're going to bring forward the data from your calendar 21 CFR. Once you've clicked that, you have questions answered. This is very similar to the desktop as well. You can either check all data, which brings forth not only the agency administration or agency information, but also the programs and program site information. You can also get the hours paid. All the expenses will be in there and all the revenue. Most of you will probably choose master data only, which brings forward all the information about your organization and about the programs that you had in the previous CFR and different positions, titles that were in effect for each of the CFRs. If you have only checked 3 New York State funding agencies, and the one you're bringing forward had 4 in it, that CFR, then you're going to get a warning screen like this that tells you the previous submission had 4 different state agencies. This one has 3. That's in case that was just a mistake on your part. You can go back and correct that. It may be that you're no longer funded by one of the agencies, in which case you can proceed ahead. Once you've completed, you get this message on the screen that the carry forward is complete. One thing that doesn't come forward year after year is the beginning and end date of your financial statements. That has to be updated each time you create a new CFR. You see it's blank right there where it's in red. You would click the calendar icon. Now, if you ask me, that looks more like a battery than a calendar, or a lunchbox. But anyway, that's the calendar icon. And after you click that, then you choose the month and year and the date at the beginning of your financial statement and also the end of it. The next step, you'll see on the screen all the programs that will be included in this CFR that you're creating. You'll see on the left side, it says which state agency is funding the program, and then the next you get the program code and you get a site code. Now, let's say you're no longer operating one of those programs for the year you're reporting on. You can hit the garbage can over on the right to delete that from the new CFR you're creating. If you are still, but you need to make a change to the site code or whatever, you hit the little pencil there and that allows you to edit. If you have to add a new CFR or a new program or program site to your submission, you see on the previous there, you had add program in the upper right. You hit that and this is the screen that appears. The first step is to click which state agency funds that program. Then on the program line, you see a down arrow there. You click that and all the programs offered by that state agency will appear. And you go down and you select the one that applies. Then you have an index and a site code and the site name and the address of where it's operated. Site codes, different state agencies want you to use different things for a site code. And I know for our agency, some programs have a different type of site code than others. If you look in the appendices, like for Appendix G for all the OPWDD programs, if you look up the program, we'll tell you what we expect you to use for a site code. Here's an example where it was an OASIS program. They filled out all this information. They hit the save button, and this is a warning. Now, if you're working on a CFR, you've created a new one, you start filling it out, and it's lunchtime, and you go out to lunch, or you've gone in to edit something, or you found that working with CFRS Web wasn't so exciting and you nodded off at your desk. After 30 minutes, you'll be logged out. The reason for this is, well, there's several reasons, but one is if you're in working on editing a CFR, no one else in your organization can get in at that time. So this 30-minute of inactivity will allow someone else to pick up while you're out enjoying your lunch. So that was the first option, to create new CFR. Underneath that was continue submission and upload completed CFRs or CBRs. If you click that button there, view in progress, well, that's what you would also do if you came back from that long lunch and you had to log back in again. You're going to go over and you see these are the ones, if you see over on the right, they're the ones that are work in progress. They have not been submitted to the state as yet. And you can see there, in truth, you cannot have more than one created CFR in progress for the same period with the same state agencies involved. So you can see there's somebody who's got a work in progress from their 21-22, and there's also, they have a calendar 22 they're working on. Once you've clicked that button, you face these questions. So if you just want to go in and look at what is in progress, you would hit View Submission. If you want to go and actually make some editing changes, you'd hit Edit Submission. And you get this warning that says, for instance, let's say you've gone in to the last one you submitted, you need to make some revisions on a CFR you'd already submitted, and you click that you want to go in and edit it. You've picked that one that you had previously submitted, and you get this warning. There's a couple of warnings you're going to get. One is you can't get in there, or while you're in there, so no one else from your organization can get in there. Also keep in mind that once you start editing one that's already submitted or already has a DCN, you'll get a warning that that will remove the DCN. That's the way the desktop worked as well. When you get in there, you can choose to continue the edit that you've already started, or you can delete the submission if you realize that you made a mistake and you're going to start over with your edit. You can't delete one that's already been submitted, but you can delete work in progress. Once you've said you're going to get into update or edit submission, it takes you first to the CFRI, where you can update any of the contact information that you have. We've got now a message that your revision session has ended and the document will be available for others. So if you finished what you were editing and you hit the stop edit button, then it stays there as a work in progress, but somebody else from your staff can get in there and make the changes that they need to make. Again, if you want to delete a work in progress, you can do that. It'll give you a warning. Are you really sure you want to do this? If you say okay, it'll go away. You can see here's an example. This one submission at the bottom for 1819 had a DCN, but it was not yet submitted. Getting the DCN by itself doesn't transmit the information to the state agencies. You have to hit the submit button before we can take a look at it. Again, if you wanted to submit the CFR, you see the submit button as one of your options that's available there. So again, until you hit stop edit or log out of the system, no one else can get in to work on that's in place. If you hit the stop edit, then it does become available, and it's still sitting there as not yet submitted, whether it's a work in progress or it already has a DCN. So if you wanted to upload a CFR, you hit the submit button and you get this message back. You're not going to get an email back like with the desktop version of CFR. You're just going to get this message telling you that the submission has been successfully submitted. And then it'll take you back to the submission dashboard. This is also, from here, then the next step would be to upload a financial statement or to upload certification pages. Under this new system, you won't be able to upload either certifications or a financial statement until you've created and submitted a CFR for that period. If you're searching for a CFR, let's say you had to get in there to find one that you needed to revise, or you wanted to go in later to upload the certifications for it, you can do a sort from the submission dashboard. It's set up right now just to look at CFR only, but you could choose budget only or CFR or budgets, and it'll give you all the ones that you've submitted or uploaded in the past. In this case, we're looking at the calendar 2019. When you click on that period, you see that this provider had uploaded 3 different CFRs for that period. So, again, you're looking here at for a certain time of certain CFR for a certain DCN for a certain reporting period, and you can either view or revise the submission. Again, you get this warning that once you go in to revise, no one else can get in there. This is also the area where you go if you want to upload documents. Here's a case where you chose to go into a certain CFR, but you got that warning in red down at the bottom telling you that somebody else is already in working on that at this time. Again, the financial statements, the certification pages, and the parent agency admin allocation can all be uploaded from this period, or from this section of the CFR. So if you go in and you choose this option, you choose the DCN that you want to work, then you mark what it is you're going to upload. It could be a financial statement, in which case you can tell us whether it's consolidated, which means it has information for more than one organization with its separate federal EIN, or standalone is just for one EIN. This one, they've only marked the CFRI. Note you can check the I, double I, and triple I all at the same time and have one PDF scan that includes all 3 of them and upload just once if you want. You don't have to do them separately. You're supposed to upload the IV separately from the others. Now, if you're uploading, first off, you have to have submitter rights to be able to upload. But if you're doing that, you have to check this little box here that says that you're uploading. This is what's required if you're uploading non-hand signed documents. If it's been signed with, CompuServe or something like that. So here you've checked it, and you see at the bottom of the screen, it tells you that the document's been uploaded successfully. And then you go on and you can upload the financial statement. And here you tell it the end date of the financial statement, and you can upload that. So the idea is you've got those PDFs on your computer, and you're going to browse to go find them to upload them. Once you've done that, you can go into any DCN and you can look to see, you click the uploaded documents line there, and you can see that they uploaded an I, they uploaded a double I, they have a financial statement in. Again, you only need to upload the financial statement the one time for each period, unless there's been a change to the financial statement. You actually see, when it looks for documents, you see them, they pop up for multiple DCNs all on the screen. And just because you've uploaded one, you may have uploaded one that wasn't dated or wasn't signed. I see people mark that they're uploading an I, double I, and triple I for a revision. Now, they didn't get the double I re-signed, but they mark it. Just because it says on the screen that it was uploaded doesn't mean they were all accepted. The lower right of that front page was the helpful links section. You go down there and you can click the manual, and it'll take you to the New York SED website, where you'll find manuals, appendices, and the transmittal letter going back for several reporting periods. And in here, you've also got a chance to get in and see training information if you choose that one. And that you'll go in and it'll give you dates of training when they're offered and some of the training handout information. The menu icon is in the upper left corner, and I'm going to transfer you to the next presenter to start with that.
Hi, this is Paul. Make sure you, okay. Hi, this is Paul Green from Oasis. Good morning. So I just want to take a quick moment and let you know we've already been using this software for the fiscal providers, and lucky for you folks, they were able to work out a lot of the glitches and small issues with new software. So hopefully you won't have to deal with them. And they have collectively come back and said that the software is very easy to use. We've gotten very good reviews. So don't be too nervous if it sounds a little bit hard right now because you're only looking at a PowerPoint presentation. Once you get into it, and if you have time to get into it and play around with it, you can create a sample. You can do everything that Francis just said, and then there's a box there for an optional description. You could just type in sample, and you know it's a test run or a sample, and you can play around with it, and when you're all done with it, you can just delete it, okay? So don't be afraid to play around with it. It's everything that you do can be deleted, and it should not affect anything for your actual CFR submission. So once you're into the software and you start working on a file, the first thing you're going to see is on the top left-hand corner, the menu icon, okay? Once you select this menu icon, you can, you see an expanded view of it going down the left-hand side. And it'll start with the home page, which what Francis was just talking about. It'll go through dashboard submission, submission details, provider agency definition, program site definition, CFRI, II, III, and such. There is a gold line in the menu indicating the place in the order the schedules to be completed. Okay. Use the menu to navigate through the completion of the multiple menus and submenus of the CFRS Web. Once a schedule is complete, use the previous schedule or next schedule buttons located at the bottom of the page to navigate between schedules. Okay. This is the recommended order of completion. However, you can jump around. If you want to go down and do the CFR4 before you do the signature pages, that's fine. Okay. But remember that some of the values will not be input until a feeder schedule has been completed. So in other words, when you're in a CFR 1, line 16, personal services, will not be completed until you have finished a CFR 4. So in the provider agency definition, as Francis mentioned, if you transfer data in from a prior submission, it'll pretty much be completed, and it will have all of this information right here, including federal employer ID number. But the one thing it will not have is a period covered by your agency's independently audited financial statements. You will have to type that in every year, okay? Certified financial statement start date and end date. That's important to do every year. Also, you should be looking at the other information and making sure that it's still accurate, making sure that your address did not change or your zip code did not change or things to that effect. Okay. Once you have the agency definition information in, then the next thing is the program site definition. Okay. Francis discussed this also. You can create new programs or you can transfer in old programs. The programs that you transferred in, you can edit them or you can delete them. It seems it's very easy to do, and it's the only place in the software where there is a save button. So for programs, when you're done making changes to a program, you do have to click a save button, but nowhere else in the program do you have to hit save. It automatically saves every time you enter a character. So this is all the information you're going to put in for the programs, including the physical address and the county and such. And you're done with the programs. You hit Next, Schedule, down on the bottom right-hand side, and it brings you to the certifications, CFR II, II, III, and IV. Okay. Certifications are very important. You can create and upload the absolute prettiest CFR ever, most accurate, perfect, but without a certification, without an executive director or an accountant or somebody else signing off on this, that this is accurate, it's of no value to us, and you have not met your requirements. Okay, so you have to complete the CFR, but then you have to certify that it is accurate. The first one is the CFR. This is required with every DCN number, every new submission that you submit. The state agency involved needs to get a new CFR. Okay. The CFR has the agency's information on it, which came from the schedule we already talked about. It also has the provider contact information, fiscal contact information. This is the person who knows the most about the CFR. So when I'm doing a review, this is who I'm going to contact with my questions. Okay. Down at the bottom is also the executive director information. This is the person who's signing off that it is accurate. And they will be copied on all emails also. Also, we added about 4 or 5 years ago the president/chair board of directors information. So that contact information has to be there. And then finally is the claims contact information. All right, claims is your DMH2 and DMH3, and it's only if you get state aid from state aid or net deficit funding. So if you do not get that, then you do not need to complete the claims contact information. You do not need to complete a DMH2 and DMH3. However, if you do, you need to fill this in. Now, generally, this is the same information that we put for your provider contact information, okay? It's the same person. So if that's the case, all you have to do is click Copy Contact, and this will fill in with all the information that was previously written, and then you click Next Schedule, and you move on, okay? So again, CFR is required with all submissions, must be signed by the executive director, should not be signed by anybody else. If it is signed by anybody else, it will not be accepted. It requires contact information for the agency's fiscal contract, and the president, chair of the board of directors. And we're going to say this several times. It should be uploaded via CFRS Web, where it will be distributed accordingly to each New York State agency represented on the CFR. Okay. Doesn't have to be. We've already discussed several of the other agencies. Several of the agencies will still allow emailed copies, but if you upload it electronically, one, if you're involved with several state agencies, you only upload it once, and the different agencies get to see it. As opposed to emailing it, you'd have to email it to each agency. Two, it stays in the history, as Francis already showed you, so that you can reference it there. So it is a value, and we do recommend it. Finally, every time you upload, the DCN number for the signature page must be the same as the submitted CFR, okay? CFR II, Accountant's Report, very important. Without an accountant, an independent auditor reviewing your CFR, we would have to go on site to each of your agency and review it there. So we are relying on this. This is very important. This information should be updated yearly, okay, including CPA firm registration number and such. It's required for most full CFRs, okay? There are certain exceptions. If you have a small amount of revenue, sometimes you will not be required. So you can look at the CFR manual, section 2, and that will outline the exceptions, okay? It has to be signed by an independent, certified public accountant, sole practitioner, partner of the CPA firm, or CPA firm that audited and certified the CFR. The CFR II should be uploaded, as we said, and must have the same DCN number as the CFR submitted. So again, we need one clean copy of certifications with all signatures, all for the same DCN number. It doesn't help us if the executive director signed a DCN number starting with 123 and the accountant signed a DCN number starting with 456. So they have to be the same, and the independent certified public accountant should adhere to audit examination guidelines. See Appendix AA of the CFR manual. So the big difference between the CFR II and the II is pointed out by you inputting the start date and end date for your financial statements. If the period covered by the financial statements corresponds to the CFR reporting period, then a CFR II is necessary. And that's what we'll print, and that's what you'll sign and submit. If the period covered on the financial statements differs from the CFR reporting period, then a CFR II will be printed and signed. Okay? So if you were a fiscal financial statement, but a calendar year CFR, then you're going to get a CFR II. Counties and other municipalities that operate programs have 3 options for CPA certification. 1, CFR II, 2, II, and 3, compliance review. And they should refer to Appendix CC for more information about the compliance review. All right, CFR III is, again, for providers that receive state aid. If you do not receive state aid or net deficit funding, then you do not need to complete a CFR III. A lot of the information will flow over from you inputting it for the CFR I. Okay, so the executive director's name and such. But whatever is not there, you will have to complete. It's completed if you receive aid to localities, state aid. Okay, if funded from a direct contract from the state, then the executive director must sign the left side of the certification designated for voluntary local service providers. If funded through a local county contract, the left side of the certification must be signed by the executive director, and the right side of the certification statements must be signed by the Director of Community Mental Health Services. Okay? So this is not-for-profits. Not-for-profits, if it's a county contract, then it has to be signed by both the Executive Director and the Director of Community Mental Health Services. In order for the Executive Director, once they've signed it, then they're going to forward it on to the county for their signature, so that the Executive Director can prove that they've done what they were supposed to do. Feel free to submit a copy of that at that time, okay? So once they sign the CFR III to the far left, feel free to submit that at the same time that you're sending it on to the county for them to sign. And then when the county signs theirs, they will either give it back to you to submit or they will send it to us, okay? So we don't mind having 2 copies of it. Counties, on the other hand, that operate a program and receive funding, have to sign the middle section of the certification and then forward it on to the Director of the Community Mental Health Services for the signature on the far right. Okay. Again, the III should be uploaded whenever possible, and the DCN number must be accurate. And as I say, they do not have to wait for the county signature. You can go ahead, sign it, submit it, and then that will prove that you have done what you were supposed to do, and then we will just sit back and wait for the remaining signature. Okay. The last certification is the CFR IV Supplemental Attestation Schedule. It's actually a very important schedule. It's a fiscal analysis of your agency, okay? It asks questions like, have you filed your federal tax form 990? If so, if not, when? Have you filed your New York State Form CHAR 500? So there's a lot of questions to be answered, yes, no, or not applicable. Okay. What's important here is, besides being a report of agency identifying data, it's a certification statement by the service provider's chief executive officer attesting to the validity of the information contained in a document under the penalties prescribed in accordance with Article 175 of New York State Penal Law. In other words, executive director could be held under penalty of perjury. So that's why this is very important, should be done accurately and signed off by the executive director. It is not required for SED-only CFR filers, governmental service providers, or many abbreviated CFRs. So on that note, I will hand off the microphone to the next speaker. Thank you.
Hi, this is Michelle Chilinsky of the Office of Mental Health. Next, I will be discussing Schedule CFR 4 Personal Services. The wages and salaries of your agency's employees are reported on this schedule. The schedule is required for all 4 CFR submission types. There are 2 sections to complete. To complete the program site section, select the state agency, the program, and the site from the drop-down menus. Then add a line by clicking on the button in the bottom left corner and select the position title code from the drop-down menu and enter the annual hours paid and the annual amount paid for that position title code. The FTE will auto-calculate. Complete these steps until all position title codes have been entered. Next, complete the agency admin section. Click the Add a Line button on the bottom left-hand corner and select a position title code and enter the annual hours paid and the annual amount paid. The FTE will auto-calculate. Complete these steps until all position title codes have been entered. Individuals who receive W-2s are considered to be employees. Position title code series 600 are used to complete the agency admin section of Schedule CFR 4. 100% of the amounts paid for agency admin staff must be reported on the schedule. Subposition title codes are listed in Appendix R of the CFR manual. Select the position title code that best matches the duties of the employee. Some position title codes may be specific to a particular New York State agency. For example, position title code 211 can only be used for an OASIS program. The position title codes are ordered by numeric series and are located in Appendix R of the CFR manual. Support staff are reported under the 100 level series. Direct care staff are reported in the 200 level series. Clinical staff are reported under the 300 level series. Production staff are reported on the 400 level series. Program administration staff are reported on the 500 level series. Agency administration staff are reported under the 600 level series, and local government unit staff or LGU staff are reported on the 700 level series. If it becomes necessary to delete a row of data that you have entered, simply click on the trash can icon located to the right of the amount paid column, and the row of data will delete. The standard work week entered must be between 35 and 45 hours. The hours paid FTEs and amount paid totals are shown by column. The hours and salaries of employees that are working in multiple agency programs should be allocated between programs and or position title codes. The next slide shows the calculation of an FTE. This calculation is automatic in the schedule. However, if you're interested in how it's calculated, the slide depicts this. In the example, an employee works 22.5 hours and 40 hours in the fiscal year, which equals 900 annual hours worked. That is divided over the total amount of the hours for a full-time position, which is calculated by taking a 35-hour work week times 52 weeks, which equals an FTE calculated to be 0.495. The total program personal services carries forward from Schedule CFR 4 to Schedule CFR 1, line 16 on a full CFR, and to DMH 1, line 6 on an abbreviated Article 28 CFR. The total personal service for agency admin transfers from Schedule CFR 4 to Schedule CFR 3, line 1 on a full CFR. Next, we'll talk about Schedule CFR 4A. Contracted direct care and clinical personal services are reported on Schedule 4A. This schedule is completed for a full CFR only. To complete the schedule, select the state agency, program, and site from the drop-down menus, and click Add a Line. Then select a position title code from the drop-down menu and enter the hours paid annually and the amount paid annually for that position title code. Complete these steps until all position title codes have been entered. Direct care hours 200 and 300 series are an important part of OPWDD's rate rationalization formula. Be sure to report an accurate total for contracted hours in Schedule CFR 4A. Contracted staff include individuals that are not issued a W-2 by the provider agency. Position title codes are found in Appendix R of the CFR manual. The hours paid field cannot be left blank, and the total contracted direct care and clinical personal services carry forward from Schedule CFR 4A to Schedule CFR 1, line 35 on a full submission. Next, we'll discuss Schedule CFR 1, program site data. This schedule is completed on a full CFR only. Note that there are 3 sections to complete: general information, expenses, and revenue in this schedule. To begin, select the state agency, program, and the site from the drop-down menus. Start by completing the general information section. Data on lines 1 through 6 and 8 carry forward from the program site definition screen. For Medicaid eligible programs, enter the Medicaid provider agreement number on line 7A and the national provider ID number on line 7B. Both numbers should be associated with the program site being reported. Units of service are reported on line 13. It's critical that the units of service are reported accurately. Inaccurate units of service can result in a rejection of a CFR. It is expected that providers make data available in the format of the CFR, ensure that the units of service information is recorded at the time the service is delivered, and that they train staff regarding the appropriate measurement of the unit of service for the program types. This can be found by state agency in appendices E, F, G, H, double H, and II. So report the units of service on line 13, which is the total units of service, followed by Medicaid fee-for-services on 13A, and then on 13B, Medicaid managed care units of service. And 13C will auto-calculate after the other 3 lines are entered. Note that for OMH providers, that the units of service transfer from Schedule OMH1 and OMH2 to these lines. Next, complete Section B, expenses. The following are the expense categories that are entered in the CFR1 schedule: personal services, vacation leave accruals, fringe benefits, other than personal services or OTPS, equipment, property, and agency administration. Personal services are carried forward from Schedule CFR4 and reported on line 16. Report vacation leave accruals on line 17, which is the increase or decrease in vacation accruals from previous year. Report mandated fringe benefits, such as unemployment insurance, FICA, workers' comp, on line 18. Report non-mandated fringe benefits, such as health insurance, dental insurance, and pension expense on line 19. Report the costs of repairs and maintenance, including contracts for housekeeping, garbage, and snow removal on line 22. Report the costs associated with participant entertainment, recreation, summer camps, clothing as participant incidentals on line 26. Report expensed equipment on line 28, which is defined as non-adaptive equipment purchased during the cost period with a value of less than $5,000 or useful life of less than 2 years. Report the contracted direct care and clinical personal services, which is carried forward from Schedule 4A on line 35. Report the cost of program supplies, medical supplies, printing, copying, postage, computer software, etc. on line 36. Report the costs of general liability insurance, bonding, professional and medical malpractice, vehicle, and other insurance costs related to the program site or program administration. Do not report insurance expenses related to equipment or property on this line. The OTPS equipment and property expense categories each have an other line for miscellaneous items. Information is entered through a line detail box. Expenses for items greater than $1,000 require individual line report. Items with a cost less than $1,000 may be grouped together under the category all items less than $1,000 each. This is an example of line 40, which is another line in the OTPS section, and it demonstrates that you would click on the line detail box icon, and below that would open up would be a combination of predefined line entries for this line 40 other line, and you would also have the ability to add additional lines by clicking on the Add a Line button. Do not report items on line 40 OTPS other that should be reported on a specifically defined line. The following are two examples of this where errors were made. In the examples were expenses were reported on line 40 of Schedule CFR 1. Copy, printing, postage in the amount of $1,227 should have been reported on line 36, supplies and materials. And the rubbish removal should have been reported on line 22, repairs and maintenance. Bad debt expense is reported on the appropriate schedule as follows. Schedule CFR 1, line 40, and adjusted out is not allowable on line 66. Schedule CFR 2, column 9, line 4, and adjusted out is not allowable on line 8. Schedule CFR 3, line 17, adjusted out is not allowable on line 41. There is an FAQ about bad debt expense on page 8.13 of the CFR manual. Report vehicle depreciation on line 44, equipment depreciation on line 45, building depreciation on line 51, and building and land improvements on line 52. All items with an individual cost of $5,000 or more and a useful life of 2 or more years must be depreciated. Appendix O of the CFR manual has additional guidance on the depreciation amortization of expenses on the CFR. Report the non-allowable costs on line 66 of Schedule CFR 1. Enter the description, line number, and the amount of the non-allowable expense reported in any line of the CFR 1 in the line detail box. Negative numbers cannot be reported in the line detail box. Appendix X lists some of the non-allowable costs, and report the amount in excess of actual cost or fair market value for related party transactions disclosed on Schedule CFR 5 on line 66 also. And this is a picture of the line 66 in the CFRS Web software, and it shows the line detail box that has been opened. And to add a line, you click the Add a Line box and enter the description, line number, and the value of the expense. Line 68 through 68A through 68G are OPWDD only lines, and they will be covered in the OPWDD specific section of the training. Next, complete the revenues section of the schedule, section C. Report revenues received from program participants in excess of SSI and SSA. They'll pay on participant fees, line 69. Report Medicaid fee-for-service revenue on line 72A and Medicaid managed care revenue on 72B. Report third-party insurance revenue on line 74, other third parties. Report federal grants on line 79. There are a number of predefined entries on this line, including the U.S. Department of HHS, Paycheck Protection Program, FCC, FEMA grants, federal tax credits, etc. Report state grants on line 80. There are a number of predefined entries on this line as well, including the New York State Department of Health. Please note that revenue from OMH, OASIS, OPWDD, and SED are not reported on this line. In addition, state aid for OMH, OASIS, and OPWDD are reported on the net deficit funding line. Report supplemental nutrition assistance program on line 82. This line is for OASIS and OPWDD programs only. Report gifts, legacies, donations, monetary donation, contribution revenue derived from gifts, legacies, bequests, and donations on line 83. Note non-monetary donations, contributions are reported as reconciling items on the reconciliation schedule as applicable. There is an FAQ on this topic in Section 8 of the CFR manual. Report prior period rate adjustments on line 86. This line applies to SED and OPWDD only. It does not apply to OASIS and OMH. For OPWDD, report Medicaid recoveries on this line. For SED, report any reconciliation adjustments from a prior period, including any reconciliation tuition adjustments included as part of the prospective tuition rate. Report net deficit funding on lines 93 and 103. Net deficit funding is defined as state aid that it is dispersed from a DMH state agency via direct contract. A DMH state agency would include OMH, OASIS, and OPWDD. Net deficit funding also can be dispersed via local contract from a funding local government unit. Report other revenue on line 94. Examples include closely allied entity revenue for OASIS, safety net payments, vital access providers, Medicaid revenue for OMH, and for OPWDD, assistive supports revenue, revenue for non-Medicaid eligible individuals under predefined OPWDD state paid. Report the provision for bad debts on line 97, revenue deduction. Report this as a deduction from revenue, provided the revenue was not reported net of the provision for bad debts. Presentation of the provision for bad debts on the CFR should be consistent with the presentation on the provider's audited income statement. The revenues, GAAP adjustments to revenues, and non-GAAP adjustments to revenue categories each have an other line for miscellaneous expenses. Information is entered through a line detail box. Expenses greater than $1,000 should have its own line detail. Expenses less than $1,000 each may be grouped together in the category all items less than $1,000 each. Okay, and that concludes my presentation for today, and I will be passing you off to the next presenter.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kate, and I represent the State of Education Department, or SED. I will be discussing the CFR2 Agency Fiscal Summary, and this is the sample, which is also included on page 31 of the document you received. The CFR2 captures the expenses and revenues for the entire agency. So as you look at this page, though, the New York State agencies are displayed in separate columns. Only column 9 is enterable. The data for columns 2 through 8 carries forward from DMH1. Column 1 is calculated by CFRS Web, which is the sum of columns 2 through 9. And column 1, lines 7, 9, and 10 should match to the respective categories in your financial statements. If there is a discrepancy between the CFR2 and your financial statements, it should be explained through the input on the reconciliation. So agencies' activities not inclusive of state programs are to be reported in column 9. And full and abbreviated CFR onlys are required the CFR2. The CFR2 is not required for Article 28 abbreviated or mini abbreviated CFRs. Also reported in column 9 are expenses and revenues relating to fundraising and special events. The fundraising special events are not considered agency administration expenses and cannot be reported on CFR 3. It is expected that the CFR reporting of fundraising and special events will match the reporting in your agency's financial statements. But again, also in column 9 are the realized and unrealized gains and losses, management service expenses provided to another provider agency on an ongoing basis. The provider agency totals reported in column 1 will be compared to your financial statement totals. If the reporting periods are the same, any discrepancies will need to be explained in the reconciliation. Operating expenses reported on CFR2 are used to distribute agency administration expenses between the CFR reporting programs. Operating expenses include personal services, vacation leave accruals, fringe benefits, other than personal services, less raw materials. The reconciliation. This is page 94 of the sample you received. The reconciliation schedule is not required if the CFR reporting period and the financial statement period are different. If a reconciliation schedule is required, it must be completed in order to pass validation. Governmental entities, Article 28 abbreviated and mini abbreviated CFR filers are not required to complete the reconciliation. For a required reconciliation, the amount calculated as a difference in the worksheet should be less than $100 in order to pass validations. You will report the sum of total expenses and total losses as reported in the financial statements. Using the additions and subtractions drop-down detail boxes, report the expenses and losses included in CFR2 that were not included in the financial statements. Common reconciling items may be reported as additions, subtractions in the reconciliation schedule, such as elimination of intercompany expenses and revenues, depreciation differences, differing allowable depreciation methods have been reported in the CFR and Statement of Activities expense in the financial statements. Other, report any other item differences between the financial statements and the CFR that are not reported as adjustments, not allowable costs on CFR 1 or CFR 3. A description should be added with any items reported here. Rounding, any remaining difference between expenses reported on the financial statements and the CFR should be reported on this line. So instructions for completing Schedule CFR 2A can be found in section 14 of the CFR manual. The CFR 2A is a schedule must be completed by all not-for-profit and the proprietary providers when financial statements are required to be submitted. It is not required for Article 28 abbreviated filers, mini abbreviated filers, and governmental entities. The schedule is used to report data from your financial statements that were submitted in accordance with Section 2 and 6, and also data from the underlying year-end adjusted accounting records that support these financial statements. The purpose of the schedule is to collect data in a uniform way in order for each agency to have it readily available for provider-specific fiscal analysis, as well as industry-wide statistics. Here's a sample of the CFR 2A. CFR 2A Section 28 has been renamed to Operating Transactions. CFR 2A line 28 is used to report operating revenues and operating gains. CFR 2A line 28B is used to report operating expenses and operating losses. For 17, 18, and forward, line 33 debt management and line 34 going concern have been added to the CFR 2A. CFR 3 Agency Administration. Agency administration consists of costs associated with the overall direction of the agency, general record keeping and financial management, governing board activities, public relations excluding those costs associated with the fundraising and special events. Direct identification of specific expenses and the preferred method for charging expenses to various functions. Further, indirect costs are those activities or services that benefit more than one project or activity that may require to be allocated. In this case, the allocation method must be reasonable, consistent, and reviewed by management. Some examples include time studies, square footage, actual use, and percentage of direct cost. Note, proper documentation should be retained regarding the methods used. Providers should consult the CFR manual appendices I and K. The CFR 3 is pages 34 and 35 of the sample you received. Full CFR filers report the agency administration costs for the entire provider agency on a single CFR 3 schedule. An abbreviated CFR filers complete the agency administration worksheet in lieu of the CFR 3. So CFR 3 expense categories are the personal services, vacation leave accruals, fringe benefits other than personal services, equipment, property, parent agency administration allocation. Remember, fundraising and fundraising special events costs are not to be reported on CFR 3. They are to be reported in full on CFR 2, column 9, listed as other. If parent agency administration allocation is reported on line 38, documentation of the administration allocation must be sent with the certification schedules. This must include total parent agency cost, total allocated cost to each of the subordinate agencies, and the basis used for the allocation. Section 15 of the CFR manual was revised to provide additional guidance on reporting parent agency administration allocation on CFR 3, line 38. The CFR agency line 6, audit, legal, and accounting, includes the cost of other accounting services such as payroll services and CFR audit cost. Line 14, contracted personal services such as management, consulting services, IT support, and more. Items with a cost in excess of $5,000 must be listed in the line detail box separately by description and amount. Items costing less than $5,000 each may be aggregated and listed as all items less than $5,000. Costs to develop internal use software during the application development stage are capitalized, not included on this line. Refer to USA GAAP Codification of Accounting Standards topic 350-40 internal use software and 350-50 website development costs. Line 16, insurance general. Insurance costs for general liability, bonding, professional malpractice, vehicle or other insurance costs related to agency administration. Do not report insurance expenses related to equipment or property on this line. Sample of the CFR 3. The other than personal services, equipment, and property categories each have an other line for miscellaneous items. Information is entered through a line detail box. Details required for individual items costing $1,000 or more. Individual items costing less than $1,000 each may be grouped together as all items $1,000 each, less than $1,000 each. Note, if the total of grouped items is excessive, you may be asked for a detailed breakdown. Line 41, adjustments, non-allowable cost. Enter the description, line number, and amount of all non-allowable expenses reported in any line of the CFR3 in the line detail box. Refer to Appendix X for some but not all non-allowable costs. Report the amount in excess of actual cost or fair market value for all administrative related party transactions disclosed on CFR 5. The amounts entered must be greater than or equal to 0. Line 42, net agency administration is the amount to be allocated using the ratio value method. This is a copy of the CFR3 agency administration, the ratio value factor page. All data elements are populated by CFRS Web. Calculated values are carried forward to CFR1, CFR2, and DMH1. The CFR ratio value allocation. The total corporate agency administration expenses are allocated to all agency funding sources using the ratio value method. The ratio value method uses operating costs of the program sites as the basis of the allocation. Operating costs are defined as personal services, vacation leave accruals, fringe benefits, and other than personal services, less raw materials. Schedule CFR3 uses a two-step process to allocate agency administration cost. And CFRS Web completes all the calculations for you. Step 1, total corporate agency administration expenses from CFR 3, line 42, are allocated to each funding New York State agency. Operating costs for program codes 0880 and 0890 are excluded from the ratio value calculation. The calculation steps. Total agency operating costs are carried forward from CFR 2 columns 2 through 9 to CFR 3 lines 43 through 50 and are totaled in line 51. Line 51 is carried forward to line 53. The net agency administration is carried forward from CFR 3, line 42 to CFR 3, line 52. Line 52 is divided by line 53 to develop the 6-digit ratio value factor on line 54. The ratio value factor is applied to the operating costs on CFR 3, lines 43 to 50 to calculate each funding source's share of agency administration costs, and the allocation is displayed on lines 55 to 62. Step 2, second ratio value allocation is performed at the state agency level, exempting additional New York State agency specific programs. A list of the program codes not included in the Step 2 calculation can be found in Section 15 of the CFR manual. Step 2 calculations. The second step of the ratio value allocation is done within the New York State agency shares assigned in Step 1, allowing additional specified program types to be exempted. The second step exempted programs are OPWDD program code 0190 and OMH program codes 0860, 0870, 1230, 1690, 2740, 2850, 2860, 2980, 6920, 8810, and programs with an A program code index. The adjusted ratio value factors are displayed on lines 71 through 77. This piece is not included in your sample, but the agency administration must be calculated using the ratio value method. Enter total agency administration expenses on line 8. CFRS Web does the rest. All agencies have agency administration expenses. Agency administration expenses need to be distributed to all activities fairly. Ratio value is a required method used to allocate agency administration expenses on the core reports. Ratio value is based on operating cost. In calculating expected administrative and overhead expenses, hospitals should use the most recent available allocation percentages from the step-down derived from the latest Institutional Cost Report, the ICR, for the period submitted to the Department of Health, Office of Health Insurance Programs, as per Appendix Y. For more information on the CFR 3 schedule, please see Section 15 of the CFR Manual. For more information on agency administration in general, please see Appendix I, Section 42 of the CFR Manual, and please refer to Appendix T, Section 53 for more information on how to calculate agency administration on an abbreviated CFR. Now, I will pass you over to the next presenter.
Hi, my name is Emily Seward from OPWDD, and I will begin with the CFR 5. The CFR 5 is required for all submission types, but Article 28 abbreviated. This schedule is used to report any activity that may be considered a conflict of interest, such as but not limited to transactions between family members.
Emily, you have to change the slide.
I apologize for that. Anyways, anything would be considered a conflict of interest, such as but not limited to transactions between family members. A key person of the provider or their relative has financial interest in the organization. If an individual has financial interest in both the service provider and related organization, another entity has financial interest in the organization, the service provider has financial interest in another entity. It should be noted for OASIS and OPWDD providers that the related organization and/or individuals is outlined in Article 25.06 of the Mental Hygiene Law. OASIS providers should also refer to the administrative and fiscal guidelines for OASIS providers. Further detail regarding accounting standards can be found in Section 18 of the manual. CFR 5 begins with 2 yes or no questions that must be answered. If the answer to both is no, you are done with this schedule and can move on to CFR 6. If yes is selected for question number 1, you must fill out Section B for OASIS, OMH, SED, OPWDD, DOH, and OCFS providers, or else an error message will pop up. The same applies to question number 2, if this is answered yes for the same providers. Then Section D must be filled out. If not, there will be an error message reminding you. If question number 1 was answered yes, Section B is where the details of the transaction are reported. You must select Add a Line at the bottom of the page to begin entering the details. In column 2, the trans ID will automatically be generated by the CFRS Web. In column 3, you must select 3 programs or slides that are affected before you can enter any data in the line. In column 4, you type in the description of the transaction, for example, a property lease rental. In column 5, which is pretty straightforward, the name of the related organization or individual. Column 6 is where the relationship to the provider is selected. More detailed descriptions of the options can be found in the manual section 18 in the relationship case. Column 7 is the amount of said transaction. Column 8, the total allowable cost of the transaction, which is the lower of the related organization or individual's actual cost or the fair market value of providing the service or supply. Column 9 is calculated by subtracting column 8 from column 7. This cannot be entered directly. Lease or rental agreements reported in Section B must be detailed in Section C. The expenses detailed in Section C should be the related organizations or individuals' actual costs in operating the building used by the service provider, and not the rental payments made to the related organization or individual. If a space lease or rental transaction relates to more than 3 programs or sites and/or administration, more detail should be provided for the 3 most affected programs or sites listed in column 3 of Section B. Again, to begin filling out this section, you must click on Add a Line. In column 2, select the corresponding trans ID from Section B. In column 3, select the programs or sites selected. Columns 4, depreciation, 5, mortgage interest, 6, insurance, 7, property taxes must all be filled out. Any other expense should be completed in column 8, other. Any items entered in this column more than $1,000 must be listed in the worksheet separately by description and amount. Any items less than $1,000 may be aggregated and listed as all items $1,000 each with the combined total amount. Column 9 will automatically take the sum of columns 4 through 8 for each item. Before moving on to the next section, make sure that any adjustments to allowable costs in column 9 are also reported on CFR 1, line 66, CFR 3, line 41, and DMH 1, line 13. Here's a screenshot of where the adjustment to allowable costs from CFR 5 must also be reported on CFR 1, line 66, in the description adjustment to lease. Section D must be filled out by OASIS, OMH, OPWDD, DOH, and OCFS providers if question 2 was answered yes, which was that the provider received any financial assistance or if the provider provided financial aid. Column 2, the trans ID will be auto-generated. Column 3 lists the name of the party or individual. Columns 4 through 5, the address. Column 6, enter the kind of financial aid. Column 7 must select either the funding to or funding from box. Column 8 is the amount of said financial aid. And now on to the CFR 6, which is used to report the salaries given to a provider's board members, employees under the title codes 601, 602, and 603, which are executive directors or CEOs, assistant executive directors, and CFOs, controllers, or controllers, respectively. Also, any employees that earn more than $125,000 a year, whether through salary or contract. Lastly, the top 5 highest paid independent contractors that receive more than $50,000 a year. The CFR 6 is required for all submissions except for the Article 28 abbreviated and mini abbreviated CFRs. If any employees serve on the governing authority, then select yes to the question in section 1. Please note that this question does not include a non-voting member that is on the board, like a president, executive director, or CEO. If yes for this section is selected, it will prompt the user to input the employee name in their title code. You must hit add a line to complete. Section 2 is where all compensated board members will be listed individually. If an employee is also on the board, only report their compensation solely as a board member. Also important to note is that compensation does not include stipends or dinner meetings. So amount paid is self-explanatory along with contracted payment amount. Any employee benefit like health insurance or retirement that is accessible by all employees must be reported in the fringe benefits column. Any other benefits that may be given out in place of money, like awards or loans, are reported as other benefits. To report on this line, you must hit add a line and fill in the description of the benefit and its cash value. Total compensation will total all other filled out columns automatically. You do not need to input this manually. All 601, 602, and 603 positions are reported in Section 3, along with all employees that have a yearly salary that exceeds $125,000, which includes salary and contracted programs. You must click Add a Line to begin reporting. Concerning the annualized salary, it is important to note that the result of the amount paid for the performance and completion of regular services, managerial, administrative, professional, direct care, support, or other services divided by the FTE. If the FTE is greater than 1, then the amount paid divided by 1 is calculated. Here is an example showing CFR 6, column 9, if the other benefit is a non-allowable cost. Mary Reynolds, the CEO, received money for car expenses that was not given to all employees, thus making it an unallowable cost. This means that this expense will also have to be reported on CFR 3, line 41. Here's a screenshot of where the non-allowable cost of Mary's car expense needs to be listed on CFR 3, line 41. If this was missed, you would have to go back and adjust it. And a description and value must be assigned. The top 5 highest paid independent contractors are reported in Section 4. These can be individuals or entities, and compensation must be over $50,000 to be listed here. To add to this section, hit Add a Line, then list the name of the contractor and select the type of contractor in the drop-down and report the amount paid during the reporting period. And that concludes CFR 6. And I'll now begin with DMH 1. All CFR types, but the mini abbreviated, must fill out the DMH 1. Also exempt are providers for SED, DOH, and OCFS only programs. The data in the DMH1 is taken directly from the inputted data from the CFR1. If you need to change any data on this schedule, it has to be changed on prior schedules. If a program code has multiple inputs and has the same index code, that program code data will be aggregated into one column. If the program type has different index codes for each index code will be reported into its own column separately. If you are filling out an abbreviated or Article 28 abbreviated CFR, then the DMH1 will not automatically populate. It will have to be manually entered. The entered lines are reported by either program type or program site. The index code and program type together will rule whether a site is aggregated or not, like mentioned on the previous slide. Generally, if only one column is required, enter 00 for every occurrence. If there is multiple columns allowed, enter 01 for the first occurrence, then 02 for the second, and so on. Requirements for filling out the DMH1 include using the full accrual basis of accounting. 2, if you are listing any equipment that is worth equal to or more than $500 and has a useful life of 2 years or more, it has to be depreciated on this schedule. Lastly, for full and abbreviated CFR types, agency administration will be separated by New York State agencies and their programs using the ratio value allocation methodology. And showing here is a screenshot of the DMH1 in the CFRS Web. The 3 tabs or sections of the DMH1 are at the top of the page: program units of service and expenses, program revenues, and program adjustment to revenues. Again, for full CFRs, the data will be transferred automatically to the DMH1. When filling out abbreviated in Article 28 abbreviated, you must manually fill out this schedule. If additional items over $1,000 need to be reported on lines 30, 34, and 40, they require more detail. Remember, if you're filing a full CFR, you must go back to CFR 1 to enter this data. Then it will transfer to the DMH1. For example, go to line 94 on CFR 1 and you will click on Add a Line on the bottom to input the detailed description and amount. Federal grants and state grants can be adjusted on lines 78 and 79 on the CFR 1 as needed. There are now specific lines to reflect PPP money, EIDL, and FEMA grants. If another line is needed, then you can simply use the Add a Line option at the bottom. Lines 1 through 2 are the program type and code. Lines 3 through 5 are the units of service. Lines 6 through 14 are expenses. Lines 15 through 31 are revenues. The lines will be grayed out like above if filling out a full CFR, and you will be unable to input directly onto this schedule. Lines 37 through 44 are the non-GAAP adjustments to revenue. At the bottom of this schedule is a yellow DMH1 to DMH2 transfer button. It is highly encouraged to use this button to begin the claims section. If needed, the information can be changed manually in the DMH2. And that ends the section for DMH1, and I will be turning it over to the next speaker.
Hello, this is Alpa Amin, host. Help function. When in doubt, use the help function. We believe this will be the useful tool, especially because CFR Web is now new to everyone. To access CFR Web help, click on the menu icon at the upper left of the screen, then scroll down and click on the help icon. A PDF file with the help content will open in separate browser tab. Alternatively, click on the help icon next to the schedule name. A PDF file specific to the schedule will open in separate browser tab. Thank you once again for participating in the CFR training webinar for calendar 2022 Consolidated Fiscal Report. In case you missed the beginning of the webinar, please take the time to fill out the post survey after you leave the event. It will help us make this training better. This webinar has been recorded and will be posted online shortly. An email will be sent out notifying you of the location. The Q&As will be carefully reviewed and answer will be posted online as soon as possible. This concludes the CFR presentation for session 1.